Hello everyone, this is Dr. V. Vinodini from Department of Information Technology, Dr. N.G.P. Arts and Science College. We are back in signing you into the data mining, clustering and classification. In the last video session, I gave you the introduction about the data mining. Today, we can see about clustering and classification, its importance, why we have to go for the supervised and unsupervised learning in the research-oriented fields. So, what does types of supervised machine learning? Supervised machine learning can be divided into two broad features: classification methods and regression method. Classification model are used for problem where the output variable can be categorized, such as yes or no session. So broadly we are dividing the classification into two. For example, if you take in your class, how many of the boy students are there? How many of girl students are there? Just we are giving the girl students are 20 and boy students are 30. Just we are giving a broad division between these two, that we call as in classification. What comes under your real life examples? Still more, we can give spam detection, sentiment analysis, scorecard prediction of exams and so on. It could be a real-time example. We can give best example in your classification model as it. And next is your regression model. So in this pictorial representation, you could see the classification which has been broadly divided into two sections, whereas in your regression it is scattered here and there. It is not broadly divided. There are lots of problematic points or there where we have to categorize this. So let us see what you mean by regression and how we are going to solve the problem in your regression. Regression models are used for problems where the output variable is as real value, such as unique number, dollars, salary, weight or pressure. For example, it is most often used to predict numerical values based on previous data observation. Some of the familiar algorithms for regressions include linear regression, logistic regression, polynomial regression and ridge regression. So, the output variable is a real value which shows the unique number or the dollars, salaries, all these things could be your regression. So, there is a vast difference between this regression and the classification. So what is unsupervised machine learning? Unsupervised machine learning can be categorized into your clustering and anomaly detection. So inputting a data, some machine language that is the algorithm you are going to use, either your supervised or unsupervised, and we are going to get the output based upon that. So let us discuss, elaborate on clustering. Clustering is one of the most unsupervised learning method which is widely used, where we can predict the data. What are all the cadre we are going to use or research in the prediction type, we can, or detection type, we can use this unsupervised clustering model in order to predict some of the values. So it is one of the most common unsupervised learning methods. The method of clustering involves organizing unlabeled data into similar groups called clusters. Clusters is a collection of similar data items. For example, in a data warehousing, I am going to take a n number of data has been dumped in the warehouse. From that warehouse, I am going to take the necessary data which is related to the education field. In a warehouse, we have all type of data like education, medical data and crime data. All sorts of data can be gathered there. So in that I am going to predict what I am going to take only the education data. So from that education data I am going to collect the similar data from which is related to the education. For example, education data can be of colleges, all type of colleges. In all type of colleges I am going to concentrate only on the some of the real factors like you can take the roll number, or else you can take the grade system or some other calculation of controller of examination of the marks, how they are proceeding likewise. So in that I am going to collect only the similar data which is related to education, that we call as in similar data. And also if I come across the crime data example, so the crime, the person who have did the crime in the last year, whether the same person had did the crime in the present scenario, which can be compared with that. So comparative of data for clustering is also possible in clustering algorithm. The primary goal is to find the similarities in the data. So if there is a comparison, at that time of comparison, if there is any similar data arise, so I can predict or detect there is a chance of crime of happening in that particular area or particular scenario. So based upon that, I will calculate the data points. So group similar data points into a cluster. So what do you mean by anomaly detection? Is the method of identifying rare items, events or observation which differ significantly from majority of the data. We generally look for anomalies or outliers, we can say, in data because they are suspicious. We cannot suspect that the person has did the crime or not. So it is a suspicious. So anomaly detection is often utilized in bank fraud and medical era of detection. And what is the difference between this FP group and a priori algorithm? Still now we have got the clear identification of what you mean by classification, regression and clustering. Let us enter into the FP growth and a priori algorithm in FP growth. So FP growth algorithm is faster than the a priori algorithm, whereas a priori algorithm is somewhat slower than FP. FP growth algorithm is an array based algorithm, which is a priori algorithm is a tree based algorithm. FP algorithm requires two database scan, whereas here multiple database scan can be generated in the candidate set. So it uses a depth first search, whereas a priori algorithm uses a breadth first search. This is a broad division in the difference between this FP and a priori algorithm. In this pictorial representation, I have given the algorithm of a priori, how the FP growth works, and also how the a priori algorithm works. In this example, you could see the item ID and the item set. In the next session, the item ID where this count support for item, that is A, B, C, D. If A repeats twice, we can support the data as 2. If B repeats thrice, we can say the support data as 3. So likewise, the item set can have a growth based upon this item ID. So what it means that if a person in a grocery going to buy a milk, if in a grocery near to a milk I am keeping the bread, so the chances of buying the milk, the person who is buying the milk, there is more chances to buy the bread also. So all the time he is a regular visitor to my grocery, so the chance of buying the bread and the chance of buying the milk is more. So at that time the item ID, the person that is X, Y, Z or A, B, C, whoever may be, the persons can come to the grocery twice or thrice and can buy the items once or twice or thrice likewise. So based upon that, FP growth will be increased. This is a pictorial representation for that. So next in this session, here is also an algorithm which continues with the previous slide, considering the following database with 4 transition, that is T1, T2, T3 and T4. We can identify the minimum support based upon the confidence level. If the confidence level is based upon 50%, what is the minimum support procedure here? So we are providing the minimum support based upon the transaction ID and the items, the person who have brought it. So based upon that, the item minimum support system can be calculated and the minimum confidence system can also be calculated. And the same thing based upon that previous slide, here we can find the confidence level of that particular item. Now we can generate the association rule here. So association rule, as I said already, the person who is buying the milk, there is a lot of chances to buy the bread also. So A, which associate with the C, support vector is 2 and the confidence level is 20% and the confidence percentage increases by 66%. Based upon the minimum support and confidence level, we are providing this association rule. And also here we could calculate the formula, number of persons who is buying the that is the transaction ID, based upon the transaction ID in the support vector and the number of person who is supporting that product, buying that product. Based upon that, the association rule, with the help of association rule, we can calculate the confidence level of both the products. And next comes your classification. Classification is a data analysis task. That is, The process of finding a model that describe and distribution the data, class and concepts. Classification is a problem of identifying to which a set of categories a new observations belong to. So two broad categories here. One is called as a training phase, which is called training and testing phase. Suppose there is a person who is sitting under a fan and the fan starts falling on him. He should get assigned no, but what he does, this is his training part. By following the fan, we are having a training fact whether the person moves aside or he is going to stay on the same place to move away. While testing, if the person sees any heavy object coming towards hurting him or falling on him, he moves aside. So that is called as a testing stage. So testing positively and testing negatively. If the person doesn't move, it hits his body. So it is called testing negatively side. So most probably you are continuing with the test positively. If the person does not move aside, it is a negative test, as I said already. So classification test, in the classification step, the actually tells as the format of file, whether the text format or else a numerical format has to be followed. And next comes your binary. The binary possesses only two values, that is true or false. As I said in your classification, two broad categories, girls and boys are there. So here we are going to have only broad categories, girls is 20, boys 20, like that we are going to calculate it, right? Likewise in the binary, here we are going to calculate only yes or no type of systems. So next is your nominal. When more than two outcomes are possible, it is alphabet form rather than the integer form. Classifier can be categorized into major types like discriminative and generative. Let us see what you mean by discriminative. Before entering into the elaboration session of descriptive and generative, let us close the session by recapping what we have studied in previous slides, and we can continue in the next session by the elaboration of descriptive and generative. So today's session we have discussed about clustering, classification, descriptive and elaboration of descriptive, and other things can be continued in the next video session of mine. Thank you for your listening. Thank you once again.